just over 6 weeks to go before the UK is due to leave the European Union, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has met with European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker, hoping to get EU officials to agree to a revised exit deal.
Mr. Johnson believes a deal can be agreed, but the EU says it is still waiting for firm proposals from the UK. It's the first time the two leaders have met since Mr. Johnson took office in July.
Our correspondent Ollie Barrett joins us now from London. Ollie, so we know Prime Minister Johnson has maintained that he's very confident of getting a new deal, but the EU hasn't been as optimistic. So how does he expect this particular meeting to actually change all that?
Well, going into the meeting with Jean-Claude Juncker, Boris Johnson talked about being cautiously optimistic that the talks would be helpful and that they would make progress towards a deal with the European Union. At the same time, I don't think we are expecting any major breakthrough in this first official face-to-face between Boris Johnson and Jean-Claude Juncker since Boris Johnson became the British Prime Minister. It's a sense there is a time for the two men to get to know each other a little, to sound each other out. Boris Johnson believes that Jean-Claude Juncker does want to get a deal done himself because he's leaving his position as President of the European Commission very soon. And Boris Johnson believes that Jean-Claude Juncker wants to have a Brexit deal done by that point. At the same time, the European Union does continue to insist that Britain needs to set out much more detail, particularly around that Irish backstop issue, in terms of how it believes it can make specific proposals that will be acceptable or at least worth discussing from the perspective of the European Union. We have a major summit coming up in the middle of October, and I think as we approach that date, negotiations are going to certainly intensify. Today, though, is really, as I say, about these two men meeting face-to-face to try and see if they can come to some kind of personal relationship that will help the process of negotiations. But certainly number 10 Downing Street briefing that we shouldn't expect a major breakthrough today.
Well, while that meeting takes place, the anti-Brexit Liberal Democrats held a party conference today. Is the outcome likely to make any difference to the Brexit situation?
Not really, not the conference itself. What has been interesting in recent days, though, from the perspective of the Liberal Democrats, traditionally Britain's third party, but really obliterated at the last general election, is that they have solidified their position and clarified their position around Brexit and exactly how they would campaign in what will be an upcoming general election, probably before the end of this year here in the UK. And the Liberal Democrats are now saying that if they do go into an election soon, then they will campaign to revoke Brexit if they form a majority government. So that does clarify their position. It does make them the most anti-Brexit party out there on the political spectrum in terms of national politics here in the UK. So that will be interesting when it comes to an election campaign. At the same time, there is very, very little chance that the Liberal Democrats can form a majority government that would require them to win a general election here in the UK. So in a sense, they can make that claim without really knowing that they are ever going to have to stick to that guarantee, to stick to that campaign pledge. But certainly interesting to see those battle lines when it comes to Brexit being drawn up ahead of what will be a general election at some point in the not too distant future.
All right, many thanks for that. Ollie Barrett speaking to us from London.